Have you ever stopped to think that maybe your thoughts or, the beliefs of a whole group could actually take on a life of their own? Not just like metaphorically, but maybe as real energetic things that could affect you. Well, today on the Deep Seek Diaries, we're doing a deep dive into that exact idea, the fascinating, sometimes hidden world of thought forms and egregores. And it's not just some abstract theory. We're talking about the real costs, the potential consequences that might come with these powerful mental creations.
That's right. Our mission today is really to unpack what these entities actually are. Why do so many different traditions talk about creating them? And crucially, what do the warnings say? What are the dangers, the demands these things place on us, according to both old texts and, modern sources? So we'd be looking at occult literature, theosophy, chaos magic practices, and even some pretty startling real-world stories to paint a full picture.
Yeah, and the sources are really diverse, aren't they? We've got stuff from like a century ago, theosophical writings, Western occult classics, but also much more recent things, practical guides from chaos magic, and even weird stuff happening online. It's a really compelling look at the power of the mind, individual and collective. Okay, before we go any further, please don't forget to hit the subscribe button and like the video. This is the Deep Seek Diaries, and you can find us on major social media platforms like YouTube, Instagram, Facebook. We've linked all the resources we're discussing today, books, websites, all that in the description section. Please do take a moment to check out our terms and conditions when you get a chance. All right, now sit back and enjoy the deep dive. Okay, so let's really get into it. We're throwing around terms like psychic entities, mind-made constructs. Oh, can you break that down? What exactly is a thought form, and how is that different from an egregore?
Okay, let's start with thought forms. At their simplest, sources describe them as, mind-made constructs, psychic entities. They're created by really intense individual thought or strong emotion, sometimes focused through ritual. Imagine holding a powerful image in your mind, pouring feeling into it. It starts to take on a kind of subtle, energetic reality. Now, if you create one deliberately, say, for a specific task, in magical traditions, these are often called tulpas or servitors.
Okay, so that's the individual kind. What about egregores then?
Egregores are, they're bigger. Think of them as collective thought forms. They aren't sustained by just one person, but by the shared energy, the belief, the focus of a whole group. This could be a cult, a spiritual group, a nation, even a really passionate online community. An egregore might start as just a symbol or an idea, but if enough people pour energy into it through belief, ritual, maybe even sacrifice, it can seem to take on a life of its own. It can act like an independent entity. And sources often say it develops an unlimited appetite for further devotion, needs constant feeding from the group.
Right, so the big difference is individual versus group.
Pretty much. Thought forms are often personal creations. Egregores spring from the group mind, collective will, almost like a psychic organism built by many.
Right.
And historically, people have tried to create both for all sorts of reasons, right? Protection, healing, getting what they want, or even as, magical servants to do things for them.
And this is the core of today's discussion. Our sources really hammer home that there are costs involved, serious ones. This is where it gets really interesting, I think. The metaphysical consequences. What does the literature actually say about these hidden karmic and energetic prices?
Yeah, this is a huge point across many traditions. A major theme is this idea of karmic backlash, or a rebound effect. Early theosophists like Besant and Leadbeater talked about this. They said if you send out a strong thought, maybe a harmful one, and if the person you're aiming it at doesn't have a similar vibration, if it finds no purchase in their aura, it just rebounds, comes right back to the sender with proportional force. Send out malice, they warned, and you may get malice back.
Wow, so literally what you send out comes back to you.
Exactly. Dion Fortune, writing about psychic self-defense, put it similarly. She said sometimes occult attacks are just evil thought forms returning home if the intended victim is shielded or doesn't resonate. It creates this kind of spiritual backlash. So using them selfishly or harmfully is inherently risky just from that perspective alone.
That's a sobering thought, our intentions having that direct energetic kickback. Does creating them also, drain us, take our own energy?
Well, absolutely. That's another major cost highlighted in the sources.
Yeah.
It takes energy not just to make these things, but crucially to sustain them. Theosophy viewed thoughts as literal things, drawing on the creator's own vitality. So if you keep feeding a thought form with intense emotion, particularly negative stuff like anger, fear, obsession, it can become parasitic. Gus Dizariga called them ideas on steroids that need psychic energy. The negative ones, he said, act like psychic vampires.
Psychic vampires, created by ourselves.
Essentially, yes. Think about it. Dwelling intensely on negativity is like building this little invisible leech that feeds on your life force. Modern chaos magic practitioners are very aware of this. They often stress giving servitors, the created entities, really specific instructions, like a limited lifespan or even a clear kill switch. Because if you don't deliberately reabsorb or dismantle your creation when it's done its job, the risk is it just keeps drawing energy from you. There's a real, tangible, energetic price.
That sounds exhausting. And what about the bigger ones, the group Egregores? Is the cost similar there, or maybe even amplified?
It is, and it often involves this big trade-off. Sure, an egregore might give its members power, protection, shared inspiration, but in return, it demands serious devotion. And it can even start to override the personal will of the members. Mark Stavish wrote about this regarding groups like the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. He mentioned teachings that their egregore attached to members' energy bodies, describing it as inherently parasitic by nature, forming a sort of firm shell within the aura.
A shell?
Yeah, so members might tap into occult energies, get guidance, but they're locked into this parasitic relationship. They feed the egregore with their belief, their rituals, their energy.
And what happens if someone wants out? Can they just leave?
That's where it gets really intense. James Wasserman, drawing on personal experience, described breaking free from an egregore as potentially a fight for life and death. He talked about psychic and psychological chains and tendrils that hold you. Escaping its influence can be incredibly difficult, almost like a harrowing spiritual initiation ordeal.
Yeah.
You risk losing your personal freedom, essentially. Dion Fortune also warned that joining an occult order means you shoulder their share of the group karma and become deeply shaped by that collective group mind.
So we've got karmic kickback, energy drain, loss of freedom. What about our ethics, our spiritual path? Can these things mess with that too?
Sadly, yes. This is a more subtle cost, but maybe one of the most profound. An egregore, or a thought form, once it's created, is basically amoral. It doesn't have its own conscience. It just embodies the energy poured into it. If it's born from hateful intent, it is hate. And the danger is the creator might find their own negative impulses amplified by it. It creates a feedback loop. For instance, imagine creating a servitor purely for revenge. By giving that anger a separate form, it might push its creator towards more destructive anger just to keep itself fed. This obviously degrades the creator's ethics, stalls their spiritual progress.
So it reinforces the worst parts of ourselves.
It can, yeah. Paul Foster Case put it starkly. Every time we create a thought form, we are creating a little demon or angel according to our thought's nature, which will attach itself to us and, over time, influence our actual character. There's a spiritual cost to indulging negative creations. They strengthen the very flaws they came from. You see echoes of this in old stories, right? The golem legend, the man-made creature running wild, Frankenstein's monster. Both tales warn about the immense responsibility of creation and how obsession can lead to ruin if things get out of control.
Okay, those metaphysical costs are huge. But you mentioned sources also detail more immediate, kind of unsettling psychological and energetic risks, things that hit our minds, our well-being directly.
Yeah, absolutely. And probably the most famous warning story here comes from Alexandra David-Néel, the explorer and theosophist. In her book, Magic and Mystery in Tibet, from, I think, 1932, she describes deliberately creating a tulpa, a thought form during a retreat. She visualized this friendly, kind of portly monk. Benign at first, but then she reported it started to become autonomous. It developed its own will. Yeah. And it started changing, becoming more malevolent towards her. Apparently, other people even started seeing this phantom monk briefly. She said it felt increasingly solid, more sinister. And getting rid of it, dissolving it, she wrote it was more difficult than to produce. It took her months of intense mental effort. It's this classic cautionary tale of an imaginary friend turning into a genuinely dangerous haunting. A real warning about creations getting out of hand, running away.
That's incredible. Do modern practitioners acknowledge this risk too?
Oh, definitely. Chaos magic literature often emphasizes building fail-safes into servitors for this very reason. Limited lifespans, kill switches, clear termination protocols. There's this sort of wry saying among some magicians that the biggest risk isn't that your magic won't work, it's that it will work, just maybe not how you expect it, or it might take on a life of its own. You hear anecdotal stories, too, protective servitors getting too zealous and causing problems, or creations just sort of hanging around unwanted after their job is done.
Like psychic club.
Exactly. And some researchers even wonder if certain poltergeist phenomena, like the Enfield case back in the 70s, might be linked to this. Could it have been an unconscious thought form, or maybe an accidental egregore, born from intense family stress that then ran wild and created a haunting? It's speculative, but it fits the pattern.
So they can run wild. What about the person creating them? The impact on their mental state? Can it lead to obsession or even instability?
That's a major concern. Dolores Ashcroft Nowicki, a respected occult teacher, was very blunt about this. She said thought form work is not for the weak-minded or for escapists. She acknowledged you can create these intricate worlds within worlds, but warned, you have to return to this world or be lost forever. Your mind gets stuck in the thought form realm. It's a stark picture of the psychological price, potential disassociation, spiraling obsession. You can get so invested in your creation that you lose your footing in everyday reality, becomes like a waking dream, or it could even tip into something resembling psychosis for vulnerable individuals.
Becoming lost in your own creation.
Precisely. People can get fixated, start seeing the hand of their servitor in every random event. This can lead to dependency, delusion, even refusing to dissolve the entity because they become attached or maybe afraid of it. Obsession can also fuel paranoia. Imagine a protective egregore to justify its existence. It might constantly make its creator perceive threats everywhere.
That sounds draining.
It is. And you see glimpses of this online. People on, say, Chaos Magic forums sometimes ask for help, describing things like intense anxiety, sleeplessness after making a guardian servitor, feeling like something is watching constantly. But the most chilling real-world example, it has to be the Slender Man incident in 2014.
Oh, right. That was horrifying.
It was. 2 young girls completely consumed by their obsession with this fictional internet character, which had arguably become a kind of modern digital egregore fed by collective fear and fascination, tried to commit murder.
Yeah.
They believed they had to do it to appease Slender Man. It's a terrible illustration of how intensely a collective thought form can grip minds, override reason and morality, and ultimately destroy lives.
I hope you are enjoying the topic so far. Please subscribe to the Deep Seek Diaries and like this video. Don't forget you can find us on the major social media platforms like YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. Linked in the description section are all the resources and discussion today, including books, websites, and so on.
So, beyond obsession, there's another psychological risk, often termed possession, or maybe more accurately, inner influence.
Not like demon possession.
No, not in the traditional sense. A thought form doesn't have its own soul to possess you. But the creator's own psyche can become dominated by the entity's archetype, its personality. Dion Fortune talked about this with what she called artificial elementals. If created without real mastery, she said, they can attach to your aura. Sometimes she mentioned a silver cord, like an energetic link. Through that link, they can inject their influence, amplifying emotions within you that align with their nature, maybe lust, maybe rage, depending on how they were made. She said it can feel like being taken over by an outside spirit, but ultimately, it's a monster of one's own making.
Wow. So it's your own energy turned against you.
In a way, yes. W.E. Butler also observed that prolonged interaction with powerful egregores can lead to people getting them into your head, hearing voices, seeing forms when you don't intend to. What starts as controlled visualization can bleed into involuntary hallucination if you lose control or grounding. And there's the tragic case of Joe Fisher, the journalist. He got involved with channeled entities, came to believe they were deceptive thought forms manipulating him. This led to immense distress, depression, and ultimately, he took his own life after trying to expose them. His story is often cited as a grim warning about engaging with unseen entities without extreme caution and discernment.
That's heavy. It sounds like there are other energetic hazards, too, beyond just the mental strain.
Yes, practitioners report more direct physical and energetic side effects as well. The sheer concentration needed, especially in the beginning, can cause exhaustion, erratic moods, nightmares even. Ashcroft Nowicki mentioned that intense visualization work can literally stir up your endocrine system. And fear, if your creation starts to frighten, you can have psychosomatic effects, maybe weakening the immune system. She plainly said, yes, you can give yourself nightmares. And that feeling of drained vitality Dion Fortune mentioned, like virtue has gone out of you, is a common report too, a sense of being energetically depleted.
So it takes a constant toll.
It can. And that leads to a final interesting cost, the price of constant vigilance. Creating a thought form isn't a one-and-done thing. You take on an obligation to manage it. Remember the old magical saying, never call up what you can't put down? That applies perfectly here. You need ongoing discipline and energy. You might need to reinforce a helpful egregore, feed a servitor properly so it doesn't go off the rails, or consciously dispel it when its purpose is fulfilled.
You can't just forget about it.
Apparently not safely. If neglected, sources warn, a thought form can just linger, cause unintended ripples, or become, as one writer put it, like an overzealous guard dog with no master. It's like becoming a parent in a weird way. Every thought form is born hungry, and it demands your time, your focus, your energy to keep it stable and safe. So summing it all up, the consensus across these varied sources is pretty clear. Creating thought forms or engaging with egregores is definitely not free. There's a potential price tag in terms of your energy, your responsibility, and potentially serious risks to your spiritual path and your mental well-being.
Okay, that's a lot to take in. So for someone listening, maybe they're just encountering these ideas or perhaps just thinking more deeply about the power of their own thoughts or group beliefs. What are the key takeaways here? The practical things to keep in mind based on everything we've discussed.
Well, drawing from the warnings and advice in the sources, we can pull out some pretty clear guidelines. First, and maybe most importantly, always consider your motives and your moral intent before even thinking about creating something like this. Dion Fortune was told by an adept, 2 things are necessary for safety: right motives and right associates. If your intention is harmful, selfish, or just ego-driven, that poison will be baked into the creation and likely rebound on you.
Right motive first. Got it. What else?
Second, don't create what you can't control or, crucially, what you can't uncreate. Start incredibly small if you experiment at all. Follow established protocols for safely dissolving these constructs once their purpose is served. Just keeping them around because you can seems to invite trouble, unruliness, or just continuous energy drain.
So have an exit plan.
Exactly. Third, practice good psychic hygiene. This means things like regular grounding, maybe banishing rituals if that's part of your practice. Don't let your life get consumed by it. Ashcraft Nowicki really stressed using common sense and basic ethics as your best protection. If you feel yourself starting to slip, losing sleep, feeling paranoid, losing touch with reality, stop the work. Recenter yourself.
Maintain balance. Makes sense.
Fourth, be really mindful of what energy you're feeding your creation. If you pour hate or fear into it, don't act surprised when it turns monstrous. Remember that idea: you are responsible forever for what you have tamed, or in this case, created. If you feed it positive qualities, clarity, love, it's far more likely to be helpful, stable, and dissipate peacefully when its time is up.
Garbage in, garbage out, basically.
Essentially, yes. Fifth, specifically about group egregores. Understand that plugging into any powerful group belief system will influence you deeply. Before joining, really research the character of the group and its entity. And if you decide to leave, don't just walk away mentally. Perform some kind of ritual, prayer, or formal declaration to consciously sever those energetic ties. Give yourself time to recalibrate afterwards because bits of its influence might linger.
Okay, be careful what groups you join and how you leave.
And finally, sixth, honestly weigh the cost versus the benefit. Is the potential gain maybe spiritual insight, maybe achieving a goal truly worth the constant attention, the energy investment, and the very real risks involved? The sources suggest that casual approaches, looking for psychic shortcuts, or just indulging whims are the ones most likely to lead to unintended negative consequences. The overarching principle seems to be, it's far better to be the master of your own thoughts than to end up being mastered by your thought form. Playing creator, even on this subtle psychic level, comes with serious responsibility.
Wow. This whole deep dive looking at everything from ancient occult ideas to like modern internet memes turning into these egregores, it really makes you think about the sheer power of belief, doesn't it? It kind of challenges us to examine not just what we believe, but maybe how intensely we believe it and where we're actually pouring our energy into the ideas, the groups, the entities seen or unseen that are shaping our reality. It's a lot to ponder. Well, that was a truly fascinating exploration today into the hidden costs, the consequences of thought forms and egregores. We really hope you've gained some valuable insights into this complex and often misunderstood topic. I hope you have enjoyed today's episode of the Deep Seek Diaries. Please don't forget to check out the linked resources in the description section. Hit the subscribe and like buttons as you head off if you haven't already. Until the next episode, goodbye.